Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons, and we're going to talk about Renfield. Spoiler warning for Renfield. There are spoilers for the 2023 film Renfield. If you're a Dungeon Master, if you're a Dungeons & Dragons player, you have got to see Renfield. It is absolutely brilliant. And so there's a lot here. So if you're a Dungeon Master, there's a lot here. One, vampires sitting in the middle of Dungeons & Dragons, right? They are a legitimate monster right in the monster manual. They have never been available as a playable player character species. That is abominable. It should be fixed. The Dampier, I don't really give a DHAM for that. It's really stupid and not a real option. But we should, as vampire, as a player character option, and we really haven't had that fully delivered, and we still need it. But one of the things that's really interesting in here, Nicolas Cage plays this vampire, and he's served by Robert Montague Renfield, right, who has been his familiar for 80 years, okay? And basically his job is to, basically the same pattern keeps happening. Incredibly strong, powerful humans come and they expose him to sunlight, or they beat him savagely to the point where he is really chopped up in pieces and almost gone. And then he has to spend months or years having Renfield feed him blood to get back to his final form, to his full form, right? But what's really interesting is it's just like us humans, right? So, which is really, this is a really fascinating part of the film, was he said, I need to eat good people. Well, you're like, so what do you mean by that, right? Well, this is pretty amazing, right? If you're good aligned in the film, it defined, if you're actually good aligned, if you're innocent and pure, right, you actually give 10 or even 100 times as much life force as like some evil person who dedicated their lives to selling drugs, or dedicated their lives to violence and crime, or dedicated their lives to corruption, or dedicated their lives to belittling others, just evil aligned tasks, right? And so part of the movie is this friction between Renfield, who is only comfortable feeding his master evil people, but if his master is like, you need to bring me the good stuff. You need to bring me people who have actual faith, people who are self-sacrificing, people who are good, right? And Renfield doesn't want to do that. But that was a really interesting aspect. But what's even more interesting is there's a part where Dracula has a real conversation with Renfield. By the way, Nicolas Cage does an amazing Dracula. He was born to play this role. He plays it really spot on, and he was really not over the top at all. He was just exactly what Dracula should be, right? And Nicolas Cage is incredibly, really, really incredibly talented actor. Nicholas Hoult does an absolutely fantastic job in the film as Renfield. Okay, so Dracula has a conversation with Renfield, and he's like, "Hey, you were talking about doing more with your life, right?" And it inspired me, and I realized all I'm doing is hiding in the shadows and drinking blood and draining victims, right? But what if I actually just do world domination? What if I grow to full power and I change the template on this entire earth to followers or food? I will be the apex predator, and my familiars will have a fraction of my power, and we will make the rest of the earth our followers, right? And actually, you, Renfield, are a follower, right? And you'll be treated well as a follower, but the entire rest of the earth is just going to be our food source, right? And so I will dominate the world. I will stop hiding. I will become public. I will get an army of familiars, right? And I will subjugate the earth. And I am now putting myself into position for world domination, right? And you're like, dude, what's one vampire going to do to bring about world domination? But what's interesting is Renfield has this support group in the film. It's a very major part of the film. And Renfield goes and he talks about the subjugation of himself as a codependent, right? And he has this narcissist who uses him, right? That's Dracula. And Renfield is getting a lot from this group, and this group is saying, hey, we're all strong and we can protect you and we can help you, right, from the world's problems. But it becomes incredibly clear very quickly, right? Dracula goes into the support group, and this group that has been telling Renfield, you're strong, you're capable, Dracula kills them, this is not a joke, in less than 60 seconds. Kills no less than a dozen people, right? And like, this is the great thing about film. You see how it's done, right? Like, he has celerity, he can move super fast, he can just bite the neck out of a person, let them drain out on the or any jugular, and let them drain out, right? And he can move to the next person in less than 5 seconds, right? He can attack, drain, and move on to the next person in 5 seconds, right? And when you see how fast he is and how powerful he is, how voracious he is, how incredibly violent he is, and what an apex predator he is, it really reminds you why vampires are in the monster manual. They are monstrous, right? But the reason why they should be a player character option, in my opinion, is they're so iconic, right? And also, I don't believe there should be balance in Dungeons & Dragons. I definitely think you can have a stable boy. You can have, a halfling burglar and a Gandalf the wizard. And these should be playable player characters. I do not embrace that there needs to be balance in any tabletop role-playing game. And the reason why is skilled player characters and skilled dungeon masters know how to handle imbalances in player characters. It's an unnecessary crutch for weak dungeon masters and weak Dungeons & Dragons players, right? So Renfield is truly incredible, and it does a fantastic job of showing just incredibly how deadly a vampire is. And also, what is your monster doing? Is it just in a dungeon hoarding material and trying to stay alive? Or is there a part where it says, I'm the predator, I'm going to take the world, right? And becomes incredibly dangerous and incredibly activated and incredibly engaged, right? And this is shown extremely well in the Renfield film. So the Renfield movie is absolutely spectacular. You have to see it, and one of the reasons why is where are you going to get a chance to see a Dungeons & Dragons full core default monster manual monster in all of its glory? And this movie 100% shows it. It also shows what a familiar can do, right? Essentially, who has ghoul powers, and the way that Renfield is detailed out and done is extremely good. If you're a dungeon master, you should be paying attention to incredibly well written, well acted, well executed material, because that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to bring a well-written story, right, that will be modified by the power and the imagination of your players, changed, right, and then it should show this incredibly dramatic, perfectly executed narrative, right? That's what Renfield is. It's a perfect, and 5 out of 5 stars. I cannot say enough about the film. If you're a dungeon master, you definitely need to watch this so that you can see two things: a vampire in its full power and how they actually move and attack, and you can 100% model that with the monster manual. But the monster manual doesn't show it. It tells, but it doesn't show. Renfield shows what a true vampire can do, what it's capable of, right? And then also the difference between a monster that's hoarding and protecting and a monster that's fully activated and engaged and focused on domination of a region, a realm, or a world. Every single word of that is my humble opinion. What's important is when I get to hear your humble opinion when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.